Okay, we're now going to talk about doing some editing on our design. So again, I'm going back to the 3 leaves, and it has brought me into my editing window. So let's do our first thing. We want to rotate this motif. Again, just a quick recap. I can actually magnify what I'm looking at. Here is my source window. Here is the detail. I can do that. It's telling me it's going to take 11 minutes to stitch out at the speed that I selected. And it is 2.6 by 4.2 inches. You remember before I changed it to imperial measurements. Now, the eye, this is where all the good stuff is. We want to rotate this motif. And that's this one here. So do I want to go 90 degrees? Is that 90 degrees? And you heard that my hoop moved, because what's happening is that the center here is actually moving and my hoop moves. I can go back to 0, 90, 90. Okay. So let's go back here. Now let's say I want to turn this at, say, 30 degrees. This is where your 2 nods in play. If I use the top knot and I turn clockwise, it's moving by 1 degree. Now if I turn counterclockwise, it's going the opposite way. I'm at 30 degrees. That's where I want to leave this at now. So I want to go back into my eye, or my information. I don't need to close out of that window. I only need to go up to 1 breadcrumb. We want to resize or change the size of this motif. Now, very important, this is a lock. That means that as I change the size of this motif, if I change just the height, the width will change proportionally. If I have this disengaged, as you can see, there's no, the button's not enabled. I can just change the height or the width, which in most times, you don't want to just change one, you want to change it proportionally. So I tap on the lock, again with my dials, I'm turning clockwise. So I'm making it bigger. Now, a rule of thumb in embroidery. The maximum you should increase or decrease is 20%. That is how the designer digitized it. Once you go higher than 20%, your satin stitches, your underlay stitches, any type of fill stitch may not stitch out properly, and you won't have good results. And that's the same way with decreasing it by 20%. If you go, say, 25% reduction, you may get nesting underneath your embroidery because it's stitching virtually in the same place, so you get a lot of thread buildup. So 20% should always be your guideline. If you need it larger or smaller, either go back to the company you bought it from. A lot of them do sell them in different sizes, and that's why, because it requires change to the digitizing to make sure it stitches properly. So let's go ahead and we're going to make this down to 95%. And as you can hear, the hoop is going as well. Now I'm at 95%. So we've just finished page 18 in your embroidery workbook. Okay, so now let's go we want to do a mirror image, because this is actually something I do a lot, even in my standard sewing, especially when I'm doing applique, any type of quilting. Let's just go back up to my eye. So we're going back down those breadcrumbs. Now I want to do a mirror image, and these icons are identical on all Verninas. So this is going to take it and flip it to the left. Okay. Again, we'll tap it, puts it back, and you can hear that my arm in the hoop is moving as well. So I'm flipping it vertically. This is going to flip it horizontally. So I can flip it to the left and then put it upside down. Let's put it back to the way we wanted it. So these are just basic editing tools that somebody would want to do in embroidery. Well, let's talk about duplication. Now there's a couple of different ways to duplicate on this Bernina. The first one is this icon here. If I hit this, it is now duplicated. Put one down here, and this is my active motif. So something to be aware of. My first motif is now not active. The second motif that I just created is active. Now let's take a look at this window here. Bernina looks at embroidery in layers. So my very layer number 1 right here was my first one. I just tapped on this one, and that became active. Layer 2 is the one that I made. This has become active. So you can have designs where you may have 5, 6, 10 different layers, and you can access the individual layers, or if I tap on the bottom one, this is what it'll stitch out. So the bottom layer, or layer 0, or it doesn't say 0, shows you everything. So it shows you the 2 that I have. So hitting this icon was one way of duplicating a design, but the other way is hitting this plus. So I want to add something to it. Let's add. Now I have a third layer with this design on it. So again, layer number 1 was my first design. That's become enabled. Layer 2 is the bottom duplicated leaves. Layer 3 is the one I just added. So this is great for adding the same design over and over. You want to add a different design, use the plus symbol. It'll go back out to either your embroidery machine or your USB, and you can add it. So let's go ahead, and we're going to delete a design because sometimes we just add too many. So I'm just going to touch on this one. You can see instead of touching here, I can actually touch on here. So again, there's 2 ways of activating which motif you want. Let's say I added that by accident. Oh, I don't want that one. Very easy. Hit the delete. Are you sure that you want it? It tells you which motif you're going to be. You can say, oh no, I didn't mean that. You go, yes, actually, I did mean that. Okay, let's touch our garbage. Now it's gone.